Hello, Rachel.
Hi, Ryan.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Spectacular, Rachel. I feel like I'm about to ascend to godhood myself.
Ooh.
I'm a living god. Did you know that?
I know that you've been promised that by shady people.
Shady people? Rachel, how could you say that? You've betrayed my trust. I was going to take you with me. Take you with me to heaven. Take you with me so we can see the poor people burn. But now I'm going to leave you here.
Yeah.
I was going to take you with me like Mr. Burns with Smithers in the grave, but I'm going to leave you behind.
Hey, if you're leaving me behind, you're leaving our guest behind as well.
We have a guest here on YumYumPodcast, the only Australian Babylon 5 podcast, the only podcast in the world.
With Yum Yum Energy?
With Yum Yum Energy. And we have a guest here who's a good dear friend of ours, somebody we've been waiting to watch Babylon 5, somebody I've been haranguing for years. I'm already giving away a bit of the history here, but we're joined by our good dear friend, Will. Hello, Will. How are you doing?
Hello, listening people. How's it going?
I'm going very well. I'm one of your listening people. I'm listening to you talk right now. Will, give us a little bit of a rundown about your relationship, history, and journey with Babylon 5.
Well. It was not a show I'd watched, but my dad, who's a big Star Trek guy, he'd watched a little bit of it, so I wouldn't necessarily rule out that it was possibly on in the house when I was about, but not something I'd ever watched until I believe last year with your recommendation. And my dad had always meant to keep up with it and watch it all, but he was just far too busy when it was airing. So we've been watching it together, and we've been having a great time. We're not quite finished. We're in early season 5.
Away from the royal court, he is vulnerable.
Lando.
There is no choice. By the end of this day, either Katarja is dead or Centauri Prime will be destroyed.
You're here today to talk to us about an episode in Season 4, and it was one where I thought we have to have Will on because you told me that you were a big fan of the crazy Emperor arc of Babylon 5, the early days of Season 4, where there were 5 episodes in a row where it was just this insane Emperor character and Londo having to navigate that. And so we've brought you on to go over that, and of course for everyone out there who is listening, everyone out there who is wondering, YumYumPodcast? Why are you called that? Will, do you know why we're called YumYumPodcast? Do you know?
It's like a Star Trek thing, but I can't elaborate on much more than that.
Wow, Rachel.
Which Star Trek?
Yeah, which
Is it
Star
from?
Trek?
Next Generation?
If only.
No.
A little series called Star Trek Discovery that came out. Oh, yeah. New Star Trek.
That one. Oh, goodness. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was like a joyous reference.
No.
It brings me joy.
Oh, no.
It brings me joy.
Makes
it
Ryan
brings me
happy.
joy. In this series, Star Trek Discovery, a new Star Trek series that is currently on, a few years ago in their season 2 finale, a random character, not one of the main characters, somebody we barely know anything about, was asked by one of the other characters who's more of a main character to help them kill the antagonist of that season. They said, hey, do you want to help me make this character scream? And this woman licked her lips, flicked her hair back, and said, yum, yum. No, Will. This wasn't a show from the
You look like you've eaten a sour lolly.
This wasn't a first season.
That's what it is.
Well. This wasn't a first season TNG episode.
No.
This wasn't the '60s show. This was modern day. This came out in 2018 or so, and so just we've absorbed that into our lives, and we go over things from a Yum Yum point of view. We ask questions such as, in the season 4 episode The Long Night of Babylon 5, who would have said yum yum? Who do you think, Will, could have said yum yum if given the opportunity?
I mean, Cartasia could say almost
anything.
But I feel that's maybe too obvious. I guess I'll go... It's skipping ahead towards the end, but maybe Jakar's point where he was just at complete exasperation at what was going on in his home
instead
planet.
of laughing, he says yum yum.
He could have screamed yum yum to the heavens, maybe.
Rachel, do you have a YYE candidate, a yum yum energy?
I like Will's. I think I can imagine Lanier saying it like out of frustration.
Every time he tried to talk.
Yeah. You're finally getting me to talk. Yum yum.
I guess I'm feeling charitable because I'm giving it to a guest star character who's only in this episode.
Erickson?
Who has no lines of dialogue.
Ooh.
The court jester. Come on. That little freak. If he had any lines of dialogue, they would have been yum yum. Those would have been the lines of dialogue. Now, let's get into the discussion. Let's go in. Will, we gave you the DVD description for the Babylon 5 episode, The Long Night. So, could you please tell everyone in the universe what the DVD describes this episode as?
Will do. Episode 5, The Long Night. 6 billion lives hang in the balance as Sheridan launches a counteroffensive to the Vorlon shadow conflict. Meanwhile, Ambassador Malari unleashes his own strategic gambit against Emperor Cartasia.
That is how it goes. If you have not watched this episode of Babylon 5 or others, we highly recommend you do because we are going to just get into the bone. Rachel, tell us a bit about your history with this one.
Oh, this one, it's a banger. It's just great. It's not perfect, but I love it. And that, I always look forward to this episode, as sad as I am to see Cartagia go. What they do with that stuff in this episode and with Via, even within this one specifically, I love it. I love both of the plots. I love that Bryan Cranston's here.
It's a head spin to see Bryan Cranston show up.
Yeah.
You see his name in the credits first, and you say, wait, what? No. And there he is, and he's young and fresh. I had a very big reaction to this, where I still do in a way where, yes, it makes sense that you can't have the Emperor around that long because he's such an energetic character that he has to get killed. You can't sustain this for too long, yet at the same time, I'm always bowled over by the epicness of The Long Night, where this feels like it could be at the back half of a season, not within the first 5 episodes, especially for Babylon 5, where B5's first chunk of a season usually has the lesser setup episodes, the quieter episodes, the one and dones, the throwaways, and let's be real, some of the crappier episodes. We are very much past the days of Dr. Franklin pushing.
That's not just a thing with B5.
But B5 was always guilty of it.
It fell prey to that.
We're beyond the days of Dr. Franklin pushing a food plan on everyone as an episode plot. We're beyond the days of bugs taking over the homeless. And so I always look at this episode with a grand fondness of just jaw hitting the floor thinking, you can't do this, B5. This isn't what these shows do. They usually leave these ones for the mid-season finale or the penultimate episode or the very last episode. But here we are, season 4 is just all killer, no filler. It just keeps going wham, 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 wham. And, do I cry when Cartagia dies? Of course I do, because I'm so sad to see such a fun character go.
Not literal tears. Still haven't seen my husband cry.
They're on the inside. The tears are physically on the inside. They go in me.
I don't think
they're deep. They're deep tears. They're deep.
Will gets it.
I don't
Will
think
gets
they're
it.
tears until they're on the outside as like magma and lava.
Oh, what are they then? What is this? Is this just liquids? Will
Yeah. So are you saying that you have a constant tear on your eye?
In me, right?
No, but like because you have water on your eye.
I do have water on my eye and in it. My eyes a lot of water, actually. You'll be shocked to hear that. I'm always crying on the inside. Now, Will, can I call you Bill?
Of course.
Thank you, Billy. Now, what has been your overall reactions to this episode of B5? You've only watched it the once and relatively recently. Could you give us a bit of an understanding of that and I guess your overall reactions to B5?
Well, I watched this twice because I rewatched it last night. It's actually it would be the first one I've ever rewatched. I do really, really like this arc, as you brought up before. This is like one of the things I brought up to you when I saw you after having watched this episode and the others with the Mad Emperor. This is like a really, really, not even just the Emperor stuff. This is a really intense group of episodes. There's a lot of very, very full-on stuff going on here, and in this one in particular, there's quite a lot. And I really do have enjoyed Babylon 5. It's something you recommended for a very long time, and I'm very glad I finally gave it a go because I've been very impressed. I've been very impressed. The thing
Is your dad also impressed?
Yeah, no, 100%.
Just want to know that Daddy Brooks is also on side.
He's on side.
The thing that I think if I really had to go down with it, I think I'm pleasantly surprised by how cohesive Babylon 5 is. It feels a very cohesive show. Everything,
The 5-year plan.
everything that's there is like it's maybe not quite everything, but it's like the vast majority. It's like it's all comes together. It was all here for a reason.
Everything
kind of stuff.
gets a callback. Everything bleeds into one another, big or small. And you are there to see these characters develop, because a lot of the times within the format of shows from this era is characters don't really change too much. Worf from TNG is going to be
They're
Worf.
static.
They have some minor changes and growth, but not too much. But you go from Via in the first episode of the show is this bumbling guy that Londo's embarrassed by. And then literally in this episode, we actually get to touch upon Londo's reactions to Via in the first part of the show and how much Via is this innocent cherub-like character. And now he's gone to this dark place. But it's not just sudden. We've seen Via have to go through so much in the show. And he's just one of the characters and many of them in the ensemble, and Jakar and Londo, of course, are big ones that everyone points to as well. But I'm glad you were also a big fan of your fantasy or your sci-fi stuff, where there's like an ensemble of characters and there's a lot of wheeling and dealing. Lots of this character has an agenda against this character. We were just talking about before we recorded. You're into Game of Thrones. You're into that stuff. So I imagine B5 scratches that itch for you in a way too.
I think most people who watch Game of Thrones would agree that this episode was the better Long Night, I think. But, I'm trying to remember exactly what one was called the Long Night, and I think if I'm recalling correctly, I think that's a fair statement.
Is that the one where it was the battle at Winterfell and there was like no lights?
I do believe.
No one could see anything?
And it wasn't actually a very long night.
Yeah, but winter's coming.
And can't derail it into Game of Thrones stuff too much, but to sort of pull it back, because there is that going on in this episode. Londo Mollari is obviously he's in the decadent court, getting all up to his schemes and things. It's not necessarily in the same kind of like, it's like a massive focus. We know absolutely every single little bit and piece he's got in play, but he's clearly that kind of bloke. You can see it from his reaction to the little assassination syringe, where he's like, they always wrap. You have to be a magician to unwrap these things. He's opened so many assassination devices. He's like, fed up, with the packaging.
That was a great piece of business, because we spend a good chunk of the episode plotting. We've got to plot this out. And like with a caper or a heist movie, you do here's the plan. And you know as a viewer that the plan is going to derail in some way. And you get excited to see how it's going to derail and how are the characters going to get their way out of it, or how they're going to scrap it all together or not. And so we spend the first chunk of the episode with Londo having to convince a bunch of people of what to do, and they're all unsure, but they're all down with the plan. The Emperor must die, or Centauri Prime goes down in flames, and everyone else dies. So everyone is in agreement on that. But
yeah, we don't have much of a choice anymore.
We don't have a choice. And then we get Veer and Londo having a conversation where Veer is the one that gets the device that's going to kill the Emperor, and there's a whole back and forth about, oh, no one was even following me. No one was paying attention, and it's because no one would expect you to do such depraved, devious acts, Veer. And I like that. In this moment of comedy, this scene, it really is laying in your brain that Veer would not kill someone. It's like, by the way, audience, Veer is too sweet and
just that reminder,
moral to do that. So when he does eventually,
he's defensive about it. He doesn't want to be somebody who, oh, well, you could never do something so depraved, or whatever the word Londo actually uses is. And he's just like, oh, I could. I
could if I wanted to. There was that one time
if the conditions were right, I would. And then that's what happens.
That is indeed.
But it's not what he wanted. It's not what he wanted after all. It's like, I could. It's like, you really didn't want to.
No, he really didn't want to.
Everyone knows that you are incapable of doing anything really dangerous or subversive.
Oh, that's good. I don't know about incapable.
They always overwrap these things. You have to be a magician to open it.
I mean, if I put my mind to it, I mean, I suppose. I mean, it's just that, once I did take a...
Yes. Take the compliment for what it is,
Could you talk to us, Will, a bit about some of the highlights of Katarja for you, in this episode at least?
That is hard, because he really does steal a scene in every bit he's in, but obviously the Jester scene is fantastic, where it's like the Jester makes fun of him in their little meeting, and he plays it off. It's like, it didn't actually bother me. And then Londo comes across him having had him shot, and then gives his little one-liner to Londo. It's like, humor is so subjective.
Humor is such a subjective thing. Wouldn't you agree? He throws the Jester's hat at Londo,
which is a warning of sorts as well.
This could
he's still very much in control, and it's Katarja being flippant with the symbol of this man's livelihood and his life that he's taken, and he just throws it away.
I really like one of the touches of insanity that we keep getting told, which is Katarja is the type of guy where he talks aloud. All of this is normal to him. And you have him having a meeting with Londo in the royal court in front of everyone, talking about how he's going to let the planet burn and he's going to leave them behind, and he isn't going to be there. Of course, why would I be there? That would be silly. I wouldn't want to die because he's a coward and a hypocrite. And he's saying in front of everyone, Londo, you'll be the one I take. You're the only one. And it's like, oh, that's the type of insanity where there's been so many other things that Katarja does, like talking to the severed heads or killing the Jester, where this action here seems inconsequential in comparison to everything else, but realistically, that's insane. That's one of those things where you go, he really doesn't have a grip on anything. He's just going to have a out loud conversation in front of a room full of people saying, I'm going to let them all die. These people here, they're all dead. And they all have to sit there going, okay. The Jester was fantastic. That the whole back and forth, and then when Katarja notices the Jester, you get a brilliant piece of direction where we get all of these insert shots of everyone reacting in silence,
and being like,
"Oh no,
we can't react like this is horrifying. We which way is this gonna go. Like, they assume that he's going to murder him in front of everybody, because that would also be
He's MO.
It would be an equally Katasha thing to do.
That one Centauri who has like a flute of champagne or whatever, and he's just shaking. He's like, oh. There's just so many sequences in the episode where you see these background players having to keep it together when around the character of Katasha. Will, what is it for you that you enjoy or you gravitate towards when it comes to the crazy, mad, overpowered leader type stories?
That's a very hard question. I'm genuinely not sure what it is that's so captivating about this stuff, but it is very. There's something
primal.
There is something very primal. I don't know. Maybe you'd have to ask like an anthropologist or something. Maybe it goes very, very deep down to when you're like you're in a hunter-gatherer society, and it's like, what if the person in charge of the tribe was absolutely crazy? Maybe it goes like maybe it goes even deeper than maybe like back species to like previous. In humanity's evolutionary past, it's like, what if the person in charge of the, not really a person there, what if who's in charge of the troop goes nuts, and it's like, I have to be like one of the Centauri here, where it's like you're just constantly on edge. I don't know. I'm not quite sure.
How would I be? And I've said this on the podcast too. There's also a level of secondhand, degrees of separation, catharsis of thinking, if I could do that, like if I could just do literally anything without having to worry about any moral repercussions because I don't have the ability to understand them. That's why we get drawn to these stories as well. And like with lots of horror movies, when you watch or like true crime stories where there's like a degree of separation where you can wonder what it would be like if I was any of the people involved, including the Mad Emperor themselves. And also you just want to see them get killed.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, because I think there's you hit maybe everyone I think hits some point in their life where you're like, oh, maybe if I was in charge, I would do the right thing, not like the people who are actually in charge. And then maybe deep down, it's like, if you were really, I could do anything, it's like, you wouldn't be, I'll fix all the problems. It's like, I'll just be a fucking nutcase who will just burn the whole planet down to a center god.
That's an option.
And maybe there's the horror of like, yeah, maybe for the grace of God, there goes me when you see the crazy emperor, maybe, Maybe you're like, yeah, maybe that's what you really would be if you had the power. It would go to your head and you'd be a bad, bad dude.
G'Kar is brought into the assassination plot. This has been building for a couple of episodes, and so
we
that
know
is
that
why
he's
we're on
part of the plan.
And Londo foolishly left him alone with Katasha at the end of the previous one, and it cost G'Kar his eye. And brutal. And Rachel, do you want to talk to us all about this scene between Londo and G'Kar, the conversation that they have in his cell?
The one that I had to pause at the end of, because I just wanted to bask in the glow of that scene, because they are hands down the two best actors in this show.
And characters.
But I was really enthralled by their performance in that scene, because there is so much meaning layered into their physicality, the blocking, the lighting, like everything in that scene is dripping with meaning. And it's not telegraphing you what it is. It's just giving you this rich painting of feelings, emotions, history, hope, despair, and it's all wrapped up in each other, and it's gorgeous. Gorgeous is an understatement for that scene, in my opinion. And then the particular line that I gravitated towards when watching it this time was, and it was a specific choice and the way that a line was delivered, which is when Jakar says, like, what does he say about Londo's heart?
Oh, that I have an empty eye that can see through to an empty heart. Your heart is empty, Malari. Did you know that?
And he says, I know you'll be dead.
Yeah, your heart will be dead soon.
Your heart will be dead soon. But the pause that he has between I know and finishing the statement, making it about Jakar, it's like you can come at that at so many different ways. And how much, like, how deliberate it was in Londo's view. Like, is he admitting that to himself? Is he admitting that to Jakar? Is he doing it for the sake of Jakar because Jakar has been so broken that Londo's empathizing with that? Or does he genuinely feel that way? How long has he known that? And how does that tie back to his "and my shoes are too tight"
Doesn't matter
speech?
Yeah.
Like,
that's the Londo character.
Yeah, like
the shoes too tight.
How far does this go back and how deep does it go? You don't know.
One of the things that's really great about Babylon 5's existence as a series trying to be serialized in an era where that wasn't really a thing and wasn't really popular, where the characters have to stay in some level of stasis, is you can actually write a pathology into why Londo is a character that refuses to grow, and yet by doing that, he is growing as a character. Because one of the things that I really liked about the conversation between the two is Jakar has suffered. When Jakar suffers, when Jakar goes through dangers and turmoils and all of these horrible things, he learns from them and he grows and he doesn't dwell in self-pity and neuroses and all of that. While Londo does, when Londo's in great pain or suffering or he's having to deal with the repercussions of his actions, he doubles down on the bad things. He doubles down on being this...
He learns the wrong lessons.
Internalized guy. So you have that, but he's also a guy that has the ability for self-reflection, and he denies it every time to go deeper. So he'll say, "Oh, I know," and then it will bring it back to the conversation that they're actually having, because he can't budge too much. And that's one of the truly wonderful maneuvers of trying to have a serialized story within a time where you have to keep characters a certain way. And so you can actually have it be like Londo's a character that we actually see a lot of in TV, whether it's Walter White or Draper in Mad Men, where they're these stoic characters who have the ability to probably change, and they are changing, and they refuse to acknowledge it. But Jakar, he loses an eye, and you're right, Andreas Katsoulis plays it in a way where, as an actor, you're actually quite enamored with the choice, which is he plays it with this level of amusement throughout the entire scene. Like, he's cracking these smiles at Londo. There's a level of almost a giggliness in his voice, but at the same time, it's not farcical. It's just this uneasiness where you can tell that Jakar has been broken as a person, but at the same time, he's had a revelation, a change of view. And we see that at the very end when he does break down in laughter.
How low he is, that he is tapping into this thing that we've all experienced at some point or another, unless you've lived a very sheltered and wonderful life, which is, if I don't laugh, I'm gonna cry.
And when he sees Jakar with a missing eye, This is another step forward into that dark future that he has seen, and Sheridan and we have seen as well. And this is also one of the thing about season 4 is the first several episodes, it just keeps reminding you about that with the threat of Centauri Prime being on fire.
This is down the line for you.
Jakar now loses an eye, and you're just thinking to yourself, "Oh, we haven't avoided that future, huh? We're on the road straight towards it, and our characters are making sure it happens every single episode. Oh, that's not great.
Oh no.
Will
they escape their fate?
Will they escape? Is it possible to escape your fate? Will, what do you think about these two characters? Because for many people, new and old, these two are the ones that everyone tends to gravitate towards. People tend to change their opinions on who they like more and everything. But I think universally everyone agrees, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say. When you have a scene between these two, they're usually the best scenes in the episodes ever. They're usually the best ones. So what do you think about them and all of that?
Well, pretty much, I mean, I think most people are going to come away with either Londo or Jakar, maybe switching between depending on the point of the show as your favorite character. And you pretty much always know when it's an episode starts and there's a lot of Londo in it or a lot of Jakar or both. You know it's going to be a good episode. You know it's going to be fantastic. But there's a couple things that strike me about them. I think one of the things that struck me with Londo is there's a lot of TV and movies and things where a character makes the same sort of mistakes over and over again, and often it's they can't consciously realize that they're making those same mistakes over and over again. Whereas like Londo, like over and over again, becomes very, very acutely aware of exactly how things went off the rails and exactly what he did to do it. And he explicitly makes that connection, and then he continues to double, triple, quadruple down, which you don't see anywhere near as much in fiction. But I think in people's real lives, I think that's actually more the terrible mistakes you make in your own life, where you do realize, okay, this is where I went wrong, this is what happened, and you're aware of it, but it's like, I'm not quite sure why human beings keep doing it, but it's like, it is what it is. And then I think another thing that really struck me with Jakar, on the other hand, is he is, throughout the show, a lot of radically, radically different things. And if you showed a person just a little snippet of a certain section of the show and asked them what kind of character Jakar is, you would get insanely different answers. Like, he sort of bounces around between like sleazy politician and like very devout religious man and like martyr for his people,
all over the place,
and like guy who's had a horrific upbringing as like a slave and like a revolutionary, but also like a sitcom arch nemesis.
I've been everywhere, man.
And like a drama queen, and like a guy and like an old pervert, and like a guy who's really idealistic about his writing and things, like how good things could be, but also incredibly cynical about how things are. Yeah. And even though he's like so many different, radically different things, it all does come together. Like, it all makes sense.
My eye offended him. Doesn't matter. I can see things now that were invisible to me before. An empty eye sees through to an empty heart.
We eventually move to Jakar being brought forth in front of the Emperor, and in amongst all of that, he's giving motivational words to his people, making sure that they know that things are going to be okay, that we can do this, we can fight, we can still be great, and all of that. And I just really like the fanfare, pomposity, decadence of the Emperor. He's sitting there, he's so happy that it looks exactly like the palace back at home, and he's got
definitely not them reusing a set.
He's got paintings of himself and like silhouettes of his head, and
I loved the silhouette one.
I love the silhouettes, and he just leans over to Londo, just saying, "Oh, I replaced the chains. They were looking a bit weak, which is bad for the plan." Yes, the personal guards
that couldn't
did it.
be bribed.
So there's that element of, oh no, the plan is already fucking up because Katarja had a moment of like clarity. That's what makes Katarja such a dangerous character. Is he can be completely oblivious, completely unaware of his surroundings, and then be super aware, and you are in the danger zone when he is super aware.
I was thinking about that because I was just like, I'm surprised that he went to go see Jakar before the execution.
Mm-hmm. But why wouldn't he? He wanted to gloat. There are those moments where he's like, I take my job super seriously. I'll do the torture myself because the pain technicians aren't doing a good enough job.
You get the feeling that he killed the jester himself.
And if not, he just ordered it because he's such a bastard.
It wasn't in this episode, but I think one of the funniest jokes in Babylon 5 is when Cartasia bitches about the torturers starting a union.
A union. And it's like, the emperor can't do anything about it. Like, he's just so upset about it.
That's the will of the people.
That's just another, I mean, that just shows how hot and cold and all over the shop Cartasia is, where he's just like, With the chains in this episode, he's like, I'm going to have all my personal guards, so they're all executed and competent. But when it was like the torturers like formed a union, it's, what are you going to do? Guess I've just got to go with it.
I'll try and call them pain technicians, but they're really torturers.
I'll extend my hand out to like one of the few demands he ever kind of went with. It's like, okay, I don't want to, but I guess.
He's great. I miss him already. I love this guy. Wortham Cribber, the actor, is so good. When Jakar breaks free, Jakar breaks his chains, even though they're new chains and they're solid beryllium, you can't break them, which just wonderful stuff, because we have seen throughout the series that Jakar is super strong. He broke his stone table. In season 2, when he finds out that Londo betrayed him,
just snaps it.
He can kill you very easily.
Yes,
there was that one time he punted Zach Allen across his shoulder like it was nothing. He's a super strong guy. So him breaking the chains makes sense in that continuity, but it also just makes you the viewer satisfied, because he is having to be a piece in Londo's game, and a part of that piece was, we've weakened these chains, you can break free because of that. But here, this is him. This is his action. He did it by himself. He didn't need the support there. He could break those chains himself and then just destroy everybody in that room.
And he could have broken them at any time.
Any time.
And if he had somewhere to go, I think he would have, if he didn't make the deal with Londo.
And Londo's plan is, obviously, we'll take Katarja out. We have this syringe thing that will stab into his heart. So we have to do it directly into his heart. So you have to look in his eyes as you do this. And it'll give him a heart attack. But there is how long will he be alive for? It's a brief moment. How brief is brief? And he's insane. When we say he's insane, he is filled with rage, and this is probably the most volatile we've ever seen Katarja. He beats the shit out of Londo during this. And Will, I just want to hear from you your overall reactions and thoughts on the demise, the end of Katarja, the whole kit and caboodle when it comes to him being led out of that room, and his final words. Could you walk us through?
Well, I mean, it was a great scene, and every great villain, you need a great demise, don't you?
And one that fits with them. We've discussed many a time how much we hate it when it's like, and they're dumb now, so they can be defeated.
Little finger.
Oh no! I think there's a couple really key bits. There's one with Cartasia just beating the shit out and just strangling and really getting up and the back of his right up against the back of his neck, going on about nonsense about the stars and the mountains and destiny.
Yeah.
That was Cartasia doesn't actually know that, like, there's about to be an attempted murder. That was for Londo speaking out of turn and telling him to shut up.
He slaps that thing out of Londo's hands and he doesn't even notice it's there.
Which is like, could very well be the first time Cartasia's ever been told to shut up or anything quite like that. So he was already mad, but after that he just inconsolably mad. And then I think it's very important that Veer, sort of one of the most humble characters, takes Cartasia out. And I think it's very important that there is that little moment where he realizes it's like he's dying, you know?
He grabs Veer by the throat. He's just, you've done this to me. I was supposed to be a god, you see? And he kind of, Cartasia kind of reverts back.
He would have had time to say,
he
kill Londo, for sure.
Yeah. He's being cradled in their arms, and his final lines, it's almost like he's reverted back to that child that we heard about in the first few episodes when Londo's like, when I first met him, he was like a shitty baby or a teenage pervert. And there he is, he
is a child. There's that quality to him because he doesn't see the morality of the situation, of any of it. It's, I'm me, so I'm right. That self-centeredness that's innate in most children at some level, in some way.
When Veer takes him out, it's even more brutal because, you may not have expected it, you may have, but Veer's the character that, like Londo talks about, he's innocent. He's had to come to terms with his complicity in some actions in this show, but he's still the morally good guy that we've had. And he now has blood on his hands. And not only just blood, he had to look Cartasia in the eyes as he did it. It's even more up close and personal. And so Veer will be haunted by this action. And it's one of those things where you're glad that he is going to be haunted by this action because it's good TV, it's good drama. But at the same time, it bums you out because the biggest problems Veer has had is being Londo's assistant. Like, oh, Londo's a dick, but hey, I'm okay. But now it's Veer's like, oh, I've murdered the leader of my society.
Yes. Not only that, though, it does connect to experiences of other characters who struggle with being responsible for other people's deaths.
We rarely get to see a character who's taken another character's life and actually sit with that. We usually see ones who have already, as a part of their job, whether it's Sheridan with the Black Star or Garibaldi in his line of work as being a security chief, or, Franklin loses lives every day. We see them reflect on lives being lost, but not in the same fashion as somebody who's just taken their first life.
Yes.
And especially when it's hard to forget because Stephen Furst is still funny in this episode.
Yeah.
That Veer's the comedy guy. He's the comedic relief.
When it goes to him near the end of the episode and he's like, and I was drinking for me and for Cartasia.
And then I couldn't stop, so I got into this cycle, you see, and then a glass broke. I think it was his. No, it was mine, actually. Who can keep track of it all?
Have a drink. I think it's his.
I think it's his. And
right, Londo.
And it's still very funny. And that but that makes the sadness of it even greater.
That's the B5 trick. JMS has always said that you follow up the sad moments with a funny moment and vice versa. So within that
scene is sadly funny.
It's sadly funny. We have him being that comedic, like, I got in this cycle and I have to keep drinking. And then he turns it to being bitter and sad where it always worked for you, Londo, drinking. How long do I have to wait until I stop seeing myself in the mirror? Because every time I look in there,
glorious line.
I can't keep. He's still there. I'm still there, and just the fact that this is just a moment where Veer is contemplating to get over the horrors I've done. How do I become like you, Londo? Which is just,
you're my mentor.
But Veer's character has been the angel on Londo's shoulder, telling him to find the good way, to be a good guy, and now he's just so broken.
But don't be too good.
He's so broken that he's looking towards Londo to help him just ignore being broken because you're a master at it, Londo.
How much more before I can look in the mirror and not see myself? Because I keep looking, and I'm always there. And right now, I don't want to see me.
You're behaving like a fool. You did what was necessary. You saved the lives of millions of our people. He had to be stopped.
Don't you understand it? I've never done anything like this before. I close my eyes and I always see his face.
When JMS planned out the show, he had a 5-year plan. He knew from very early on that Londo would kill the Emperor. That was just one of those things where it was happening. It was always in the plan. Londo will kill the Emperor because that's Londo's natural arc of, he'll kill the Emperor and then it will lead him to become the Emperor. Oh, blood on the hands. But then when he was writing it, it was almost as if the character Veer spoke out to him and said, no, it should be me. I should do this. This is my kill. And so this was one of those last second revelations in the script writing of,
like he was writing like the page before it happened, and he was like just got that sense within him, the character speaking to him, and he changed it.
And so it gives Veer some dramatic heft for the rest of the show, where even in later episodes in season 4, we see that he's up late drinking at night and he's having nightmares about Katasha.
I swear there's points later on where, like, Veer is quite gaunt. Mm-hmm. And, like, that's because, like, you know, Veer's like, I'm the fat, chubby guy, but it's a bit like this bits where he's looking gaunt and haggard and...
Yeah, that
disturbed.
leads into the actor's weight loss.
Yeah, the actor had real life weight loss and health problems, but it gives Veer that thing that you're saying there. It's like, Veer's having a time in this series.
Yeah, Veer doesn't look like himself anymore. He's something in him shifted.
Well, what do you think about this angle to take with Veer, where he's taken a life and we actually just have a whole scene dedicated to him and Londo talking about it? What do you think?
I mean, this episode is really top shelf, so it's hard to... There are a lot of good scenes, but that is a very, very good scene. One aspect of it I do really like is, look, Cartagia is just awful, and look, it did have to be done. Millions and billions of people's lives were on the line, but I like that, like, you know, and like Londo says, it was necessary, but it's like, I still had to stab a man to death with my own hands and look him right in the eye. And he died right there, you know. And I like that aspect of it. It's just like, he's evil. There's no need to worry. It won't fuck you up to kill him or anything, you know. You see that sometimes. And depending on what story you're trying to tell, sometimes it's necessary to be like, that guy was evil. It didn't fuck up the characters to kill him that much, you know. It was just one of those things.
He wasn't a person. He doesn't count anymore. He's so evil. I'm sure he doesn't have a soul. You don't have to be remorseful.
Yeah.
But this was like, it hurts. It hurts. It's like that's no, like, had to be done. It's like, that's no comfort.
No, it doesn't matter why it was done. It matters just that he killed somebody. The justifications of it don't erase that fact and the mark that it puts on Veer's soul.
But the fact that he worries about this shows that he still has that innocence and that purity and goodness of heart, which Londo
hasn't
does not
darkened
have.
him, yeah.
Well, and this is the classic case where something bad is happening and Londo still turns it onto himself, where he's all, I'm so sorry, I can never tell you that this will go away, that this pain will go away and that you won't see his face. However, I can tell you that you feeling this way is a good thing. I can't have that ability. I'm kind of fucked, actually. I'm damned, and I know it, and I'm on the road to hell. But
his heart is empty, but Veer's is not.
Veer's is not, and the heart thing comes back. And
Abraham
Lincoln. But they have the fireworks outside because the Narn are aware that they're now free of the Centauri, and Veer, I should say, says it all. What was it all for? What was any of this for? And that's what the central question is when you watch the series and you see Londo's actions and how he's a character that wants power, and yet at every turn he's trying to refuse the power because he feels guilt about the horror that his actions take. Like
the desire for the glory is too much. Because he wants to be a good Centauri.
And a good he wants to have a good soul as well, but you can't have both. You can't have a soul and be responsible for the death of millions of people. You can't have it both ways. And Londo tries.
You can't have an unmarked soul and be a war criminal, Londo. I'm sorry. That's just that's a pretty solid dichotomy. You can't. No, you can't pay me to do this. You can't get out of this.
But he will try. That's a Londo character. He builds these horrible traps for himself, and you as the viewer have to watch him take himself out of them just to step into another one. Yeah, it really is Sideshow Bob with the rakes, Londo. It's just
yes, it is.
Crazy Emperor now.
But
and then after this, it's like, oh, Jakar hates me even more.
The moments where I wouldn't say that he finds peace at any point after he's fucked up so much, but he still reaches out for people to try and stabilize him at different points.
Mm-hmm.
We have gone back a number of times to the conversation that he had with Garibaldi, and that stage where he was he was trying to get friends again.
But nobody wanted to be his friend because they were all afraid of him.
We were Delenn being like, we were never friends, bro.
And by the end of season 4, Jakar's his best friend.
Yes!
Him and Jakar are having drinks together, and Jakar's hidden his eyeball, and it's just like, oh, they're best friends.
Yeah.
It's a marvelous journey.
They understand
behold.
each other in a way that nobody else does.
I kind of want to jump back to a previous point because I think this episode illustrates it quite well. So we got Jakar, the man who is very, very many things throughout Babylon 5. In this one, and you see, this comes up a bit in TV where some character will kind of be a bit like Jesus. And I feel like usually, I feel like usually.
You mean that's an allegory that people use?
I feel like often in TV it hasn't always stuck the landing. I remember I was like, I love X-Files, but there's bits in X-Files where Mulder's kind of Jesus, and I'm just not sure.
But Will, the truth is out there.
You know what? Now that you say that, some things about Alien 3 are just
really?
like just clicking into gear.
Wait. You're saying there's Jesus symbolism in the show where the main character rose from the dead?
It's entirely possible.
It's entirely possible.
But I mean, I think it's like,
but the fact that it's not limited to one character. Sorry to cut you off, Will.
But I think no. It's important to come in. Like, it comes up often enough. It's like it's not even just Jakar, but it's like I think if you show someone the very first episode of Babylon 5, and you'd be like, "There's going to be a point later on in the show where Jakar will be kind of like Jesus, and it'll really work."
Pleasure threshold.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't.
But it does. It does work in this episode.
Yeah.
He goes from pleasure thresholds
to Jesus.
To their Lord and Savior.
It's quite blunt, you know, when he's in the stocks that are like very cruciform, and he's like being paraded through the crowd, and he like stumbles, and you know,
they pick him up.
And like they sort of want to take his burden, and he says no.
And then at the end, he has to step away from his own people. He has to step back for the safety of them. If he takes the reins of power
into their plans, because he knows
into their sins.
Yeah, he knows that going after the Centauri will just lead, like it's just the cycle.
This is one of my favorite scenes of Jakar in the season, where he's in the throne room and they're all trashing it, and they're trashing it to bits. And not just the laugh, it's the whole thing of
leading up to that point.
What Will said is very true. He's a man who wears many different hats. He changes. And in season 1, he would have been right there with them, trashing the place, saying, fuck the Centauri. Our strength showed them to run away. But he has woken up from that spell. And
we
so
got a little bit of that when he doesn't help them kill Reefer.
True. And here he's angered and afraid and shocked at their
appalled that they've
mob
just
mentality.
back.
Their mob mentality, in that, they fooled themselves into thinking that our strength has made them run away, and that we have to keep fighting instead of securing themselves and looking after themselves and licking our wounds and healing.
And also using the resources that the Centauri left behind to rebuild.
And learning from the Centauri method instead of looking at what he says, which is they are lost people.
I love just
they
how,
learn the wrong lesson.
I just love how pained and angry and just like, that's one of the best line deliveries, maybe even in the entire show, where he's just like so hurt and so just exasperated. It's like, you could not have seen a dictator gone more wrong than Cartasia, and you don't
so
get
quick
it.
to replace him. I think the line delivery that I love the most is, "What have I been through?
Yeah, what have I endured?
What have I enjoyed?"
And he laughs his ass off as he walks out. I really like the piece of direction there where he turns with the eye patch first, and it's like, oh yeah, he lost an eye, buddy. He has one eye. I think he can tell what he's endured.
Like,
he was about to be executed.
Right there.
He was about to be executed vivisection
there.
style in front of you. I think he can tell what he's endured.
Oh no, he's only been recently tortured. Clearly, we've been here for months. And you were back on Babylon 5.
Like a year or so now. And it was at the mid to end of season 2. This is
I was
season
like,
4. It's been
I was
going to
say years, and then I was like, I don't think it's quite been like.
It's such a great scene where you're having Jakar celebrate the fact that his people are free, and then have the reminder that they're not free like he is.
I will not take the throne. If the Kari is restored, I will take my place among them, but that's all. I did not fight to remove one dictator just to become another myself.
But the Centauri
are a lost people! They are to be pitied. They are already on a course for self-destruction. They do not need help from us.
On Babylon 5, things are a bit more somber, a little bit more dire, and we know this because Ivanova's here to share a sad, very sad backstory.
Oh, but she gets lumped with some dirty, smelling exposition in the first scene that she's in.
Well, you have to catch the audience like Will up in case they're watching it again for the first time in a while of what the stakes are. The Shadows, now they have a planet killer, and the Forlorns have planet killers.
I mean, you get the Sandbox line.
And it's also partially, the era, isn't it? It's like you might not have caught last episode.
You might have missed it.
Yeah,
Football could have been on, and you could have missed it or something. or there was a TV power outage. You could have missed it. Or and then in 1,000 years, some aliens who are catching the rerun of it get really angry that their broadcast got interrupted, so they come to Earth and invade it. Yeah. And now a ragtag delivery crew have to recreate it. But Ivanov is very sad. Believe it or not, she's a sad character, but a great character.
Too much trauma.
No, she has a right amount of trauma because it always relates back to the same point.
What I meant isn't that JMS overloads her with trauma. It's, I feel for this character and I wish she had to suffer less. That's what I meant by that statement.
She's having a conversation with Sheridan, and she wants to go out and fight. She wants to be the badass, fighting to the very end,
She's
take
a soldier.
down. She's a soldier, and Sheridan has to make the hard decision of saying no. And you have an important mission ahead of you, which is to continue your work finding the first ones. And she pushes back against this, of course. And not only because she wants to be there to fight, it's not as just a petulant as, oh, I'm owed this. it goes deep into the roots of the character we know, and so we get this beautiful monologue, very
resurfaced memory,
resurfaced and hard-hitting, hard to watch but perfectly executed monologue where it goes over the last time she saw her mother before her mother committed suicide, and it really gives us a moment to reflect back on this character we've known for 4 seasons and say
all that she's lost.
And not just that, but reflect on, this mentality that you formed at a young age has really been throughout the entire series that we've seen, where she doesn't like being told to wait and be left behind and have to rely on others to come get her. It's a touching thing, like it touches a sore point for her. And Will, Ivanova is a character that also a lot of people gravitate towards and like very much, and I'm curious of what do you think? What has been your thoughts on the character, and what did you think of the tragic Ivanova monologue here?
Well, I think it says a lot on just how intense The Long Night is. That when I was rewatching this, I actually was like, "Oh, wait, this monologue is in this one." It's like, I thought this must have been in another, because it's like there's already so much there's so much heavy stuff in this one. It's a bit like, it's in this one, and like that is it was very well done. Wasn't like, oh my God, it wasn't overwrought. Yeah, overwrought, overcomplicated. It wasn't anything like it. It was just like, was everything it needed to be, and it was very sincere and executed very well. And just really, I mean, this whole episode has a lot of stuff that just really gets to you, but, right from the very start,
With the story happening on Babylon 5, since it's jam-packed as an episode, this is a tight 45 minutes. It has so much happening. The way to counter it, the way to balance it out, is to quickly and efficiently explain the stakes. So the Shadows now have planet killers. They have a death cloud. I love the death cloud. The cloud that just goes over and just shoots missiles into the planet. We don't even know
what it's made of.
It's just, how do we fight that? We establish that and say...
I like that it looks like fleshy, and maybe it's alive, but maybe not. And that's
like, well, they both have organic technology.
Cthulhian
could be.
Nightmare.
I just like that it was just like, what is going on here? And then it wasn't, that was also like, you just got like a tiny little snippet of that. Yeah. I don't think it wasn't like a super detailed thing. It's like,
no, but it's beyond our comprehension. It's just like,
what I'm getting at is to counter the deep level of detail in the Londo plot, where it's like, you have to know these things, you have to know this and this and this. So when all the dominoes hit, you can sit back and go, that was earned. This side, it quickly establishes the information you need to know. Like even the death cloud, you see a bit of it, you see underneath the cloud, shoots missiles, you get a quick piece of exposition from Bryan Cranston, and you go, I got it. And if not, I got the vibe of it. Yeah. And that's what I really liked about...
I know to be afraid.
That's what I really
liked. You got enough.
That's what I really liked about this story was... You could make a whole episode about Sheridan having to weigh the pros and cons and think about his soul about sacrificing a ship of Rangers for this maneuver that could or could not work. But instead, we are just given the cliff notes of what that is.
And you imagine that conversation being had between him and Delenn, because they're running late to the meeting at in the war room. So it's just like, that they would have talked that over, because you know the characters, you know the world. You can fill that in confidently as an audience member. It's not like, and he brought them in at this point. It's like, no, those characters were having that conversation.
And why that isn't a cop-out is what the direction does with insert shots, reaction shots, crowd shots, close-ups is... it establishes the atmosphere that is at the heart of the story. So you can tell that all of this is weighing on Garibaldi, Delenn, Sheridan, Lanier, and all of the council, everyone. Instead of having the dialogue tell you and having scenes dedicated to people debating about it like you would in season 1.
Hold up a minute. You mean that this show is showing us, not telling us.
And it's a big difference because, say, in season 1, Deathwalker, great episode, but a lot about Deathwalker is like everyone has an opinion on this one thing and blah.
And they're gonna share it.
And here, they're skipping all of that, which you could say, if this was another series or handled wrong, is a cop-out or you're missing the meat on the bones here. But what they do is they rely on the emotion of what it is, which is Sheridan has to sacrifice a crew of people for the hope that they could save 6 billion lives. And so you need great direction and great actors to pull off what's minimally in the script. Because, again, this episode's very jam-packed. And if this side of the story had more meat on the bones, I think the episode would just burst at the seams and be unruly. This is an era where you had strict amount of time to tell your story, not like now where the Orville can have 88-minute-long episodes, and you're saying to yourself, why is it this long? And it's because we can.
Some constraints are good.
It's very much like that. And Sheridan has to make these tough calls here. And we're talking about the emotion of the thing. Will, did you feel the emotions when it came to this part of the episode of just our noble crew, Garibaldi and Lanier and Delenn and Sheridan, already know that they're going to have to sacrifice a person? What did you think of that?
Multiple people.
I think
there's Mbryo on that shit.
Yeah.
I think it's a really excellent contrast because it's like you have the scene. Like, I don't think we needed. I think you're right, Ryan. I don't think we needed Sheridan intellectually agonizes over the decision because we know what he would. We may not know the exact words he would say, but we know what he would think about it. But instead, we've got the contrasting scene of Sheridan. He's like, okay, I've sacrificed. I have to listen to it. I have to, like, in some way, even if only symbolically, be there with him.
I owe him this respect, and the crew that respect of listening to their sacrifice and feeling the weight of that, and not just being like, this is a win because it succeeded, but feeling the cost at the same time as feeling the victory, which makes it more complex and more interesting and layered in terms of the writing. And then you get Bruce's performance on top of that.
The Tennyson poem that's read at the end emphasizes that exact point you're making as well, Rachel.
Whereas, like, I mean, I think the thing was Sheridan sacrificed a single crew, and that was clearly like an agonizing, horrific decision that he had to bear. And that's what makes him a real leader, whereas Cartasia is going to sacrifice virtually his entire species, possibly for something that he doesn't even believe in, possibly for a delusion he possibly doesn't even believe in all the time. And he might go years, if he had gone through with it, he might have gone years, decades without even thinking about it.
He wasn't even brave enough to back it up and do it himself. He couldn't have stayed. Well, Sheridan is having to become Winston Churchill, like he talked about in season 2, where when you make these choices, when you know that you're having to sacrifice people, you actually have to look at it and you have to actually accept what you've done, and it may weigh heavy on you, but that's the role of leadership. And so when he's at the end listening to Ericsson's demise, you don't need Bruce Boxleitner to act anything big out of it. It's just him sitting there with that face that's just saying more than any big speech that JMS could write.
The elbows on the desk.
The underlighting and...
Yeah, like he's trying to get closer to the recording in a way. So he's even more there because he's right up against the thing that sort of represents the recording to the audience, right? Because he's not backing away from it. He's being lit up by that panel. That's what he's bathing himself in.
And Mira Falan, who plays Delenn, she really captured this one thing about Delenn that is really great because it contrasts her to the other characters like Sheridan and Londo. When she does something that she knows is morally dubious or bad, or it upsets her on a personal level, she can't look the other person in the eye. She's always looking away or looking down. She has a hard time looking directly in the eye. Well, Sheridan and Londo don't have that problem.
Yeah,
they
when
can
she
do
was
that.
telling Jakar about them failing to...
Oh, in season 2.
Yeah.
When it's like, we'll give you scraps of food. That could help you guys. And she couldn't look him in the eye when she did that. But here, when they're talking to Erickson, she has a hard time. She's the head of the Rangers.
Yeah.
And Sheridan's the one making the call here.
Yep. But they do have joint control of it at this point.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that
like she's fully bought him in.
She's
but
the
way
shock.
that she's so hesitant to look at the screen when Erickson addresses Delenn. He is reaching out to her because Delenn is the symbol for the Rangers. She means everything to them. She's the one.
You can count on us, sir. We'll get it done.
I know you will.
Isilza Veni, Delenn. In Valen's name.
Valen's name.
I think this is a perfect opportunity to segue into our Actors Spotlight section, where this is the part of the show where we talk about an actor or actress that appeared in a given episode. Big role, small role, main role, recurring or minor or one-off. And today we have Bryan Cranston. He's here in Babylon 5, and he plays Erickson, the Ranger that has to accept his fate and be sacrificed. And this is a tale that is now as old as time, but back in the day would have been a crazy thing to say. But Bryan Cranston's a great actor. He's a great dramatic actor. He can pull this off. If you said this in 2006, people would raise their eyebrows because he was the dad. He was a comedy guy. He was from Seinfeld and Malcolm in the Middle, and he was wacky. Even though he's already done dramatic stuff like X-Files, he's a great actor. And so this role that could be inconsequential, nothing, and or a failure in any other actor's hands is excelled here. He brings so much weight and gravitas. There's this moment where the camera pushes in on him like it's a hero shot, and it makes you believe that this character has been a part of the show this whole time because Bryan Cranston just has that on-screen presence and charisma. And I'll be realistic with you people. When I watched B5 on DVD back in the day, I actually did take a while to actually buy this because he was my favorite character in Malcolm in the Middle, the silly dad, the crazy silly dad. And I had a hard time believing in him playing a character that wasn't silly because it's just so synonymous with him in that era of his career for many people. So for myself, it was something that took me out of the episode was Bryan Cranston's here. Just like how later in the season, Dr. Kelso from Scrubs is in an episode as like a crazy Earth captain, and he's just as insane as he is as Dr. Kelso. But that is not to negate their talent, because clearly we now have a different understanding of Bryan Cranston. So actually today, you look at this here and you go, this is in his wheelhouse. This has always been in his wheelhouse, huh? And so I really love the performance here where he's given very little, but he makes out so much from it.
Not every actor can sell those screen scenes, but he does.
Yeah, on the TV screen, yeah. He does, and he makes you believe it when he calls out the name of Valen as his guiding principle, even though we may have a chuckle going, that was Jeff Sinclair. He doesn't know that.
Original sex man.
The Jeffrey Sinclair. But Will, we didn't tell you too many people who were in B5. I can't remember if we told you if Bryan Cranston showed up or not, but thoughts, reactions, feelings to Bryan Cranston being here, his performance, and just seeing him?
I mean, this is a recurring thing when watching Babylon 5, but it's a recurring thing just watching TV shows that you didn't watch in their initial run, where you're kind of like, oh, I didn't know that guy was in this. You know, it's like, oh, it's Bryan Cranston.
Oh, it's that guy.
Oh, it's Penn and Teller. Oh, it's Dr. Kelso. It's and Bartek needed to tell me this, I think. It's like, oh, it's Travis Touchdown in Babylon.
Yeah. Robin Atkin Downs.
Especially Babylon 5 gets a lot of you. Oh, didn't know he was that. Didn't know he was in that. Oh, didn't know they were in that. Didn't know they were involved. So yeah, no, that was pretty much my, especially like I didn't see his name in the credits. I usually didn't pay too close of attention to the opening credits, the actual literal credits themselves. So it's like I didn't actually. So when he pops on screen, it's like, oh yeah, Bryan Cranston's in this. Oh, I didn't know he was in this, and it's like a pleasant surprise. And I think you summed it up really well, Ryan, when you said it's like he did a remarkable lot with really not very the bare essential screen time.
And so much rides on him
work.
being able to do it. Because you wouldn't feel Sheridan's pain if Erickson didn't feel like a real person. Because it would feel void. Because it's just like, oh, well, yeah, okay, whatever, get rid of him. He doesn't mean anything. But he feels like a person because of the performance.
Outside of our mainstay Ranger characters of like Marcus and eventually Lanier, he's one of the Ranger characters I think about. When I think about characters who are Rangers, there's one in season 5 where we get a whole episode dedicated to these 2 new Mbryo Rangers. I think about them less than I think about Bryan Cranston.
Absolutely.
And they get a whole episode dedicated to them. Here, he gets, let's be realistic, 5 minutes of screen time.
Yeah.
And boy, does he sell it. Now, Rachel, could you go over your relationship and history with Bryan Cranston? Because I would definitely say for the modern age of television and film, he's an actor that has had the perception of who they are changed drastically.
Yeah,
in a quick succession of time. When it's like Breaking Bad changed a lot for him.
Yes, it was career defining for him. For so long in the early parts of his career, he was just doing like one episode things, and famously was a Power Rangers villain.
Yeah, voice of a Power Rangers villain.
Did dub work because that's work that he could get. I don't imagine it was a particular passion piece for him.
Now you shall taste my firepower.
Bryan Cranston, for me, is Walter White. I'd watched him in other things. I'd watched some Malcolm in the Middle. I knew that he was Hal. I saw the ads for Malcolm in the Middle all of the time. So I have seen that man in his underwear so much.
In his tidy whities.
So much.
That was the promos for Breaking Bad to begin with, was him in the tidy whities.
Yep.
For you, Breaking Bad was really the touchstone point for your forming
that was
of him.
Yeah, my main thing with him that I latched onto, because I would have seen him in other things, but he would have, he's just that guy.
That's exactly it. One of your favorite films he's in, he was in Little Miss Sunshine. He's like the reason the film is happening. He's the reason that they're on the trip.
Yeah.
One of the reasons.
Yes, because the dad changes his mind because he wants to go and speak to Bryan Cranston.
But you don't remember Bryan Cranston's role in that per se. You go, when you watch it, you go, oh, look, it's Bryan Cranston. But he isn't getting to be that exuberant figure. Now, I think, Will, you and I may have a similar background when it comes to Bryan Cranston. For you, when you think of him, what's your overall journey with this actor? Like, what's one of the first things that you remember seeing him in, and just your overall viewpoint on him now as an actor?
Well, the thing I've seen him in the most, and probably the first thing I would have seen him in, I definitely wouldn't have been too conscious of, is my dad is big into Seinfeld, so he's got all his his bits on Seinfeld. That's probably all stuff I've seen.
He's a dentist.
The most.
Yes, Tim Watley, the dentist.
That's probably all the stuff I've seen the most, just because Seinfeld has just been on throughout my life, and I've got a mate who's so into Seinfeld these days that like he's picked out and recognized individual bits of canned laughter. So it's like definitely that's the stuff I've seen the most of. Whereas like I only really watched Malcolm in the Middle when it was like just happened to stumble when it was on.
Mm-hmm.
But so I think that would have probably been. I think that's probably, I guess, sort of the nexus of it for me, I guess.
And he's like a handsome, cocky guy in Seinfeld as well, where in the other roles like Breaking Bad and Malcolm in the Middle, he's like a nebbish, middle-aged, dorky loser. Well, in some of his early days of his career, like he had the big fluffy tall hair or like the cocky attitude, and he could swagger with that, and we've seen him bring that back in roles as well. You mentioned a while ago X-Files. You went on an X-Files binge and watch a little while ago. Do you remember him in X-Files, his role in that, where he couldn't stop driving, or
yes, that's a very good episode, the one where does he has something in his head from
that
the signal?
Explode, yeah.
And if he doesn't keep moving at a particular speed, his head will explode, and he's being drawn towards one side of the continental United States. I can't recall if it was West Coast or East Coast. It was one of the two. And that's a really good especially like he's in that quite a bit, if I recall correctly, and quite. Like, that's very focused around him, and that's a good episode, that one.
That got him on Breaking Bad because
I forget
Vince
what that
Gilligan,
one was called. That's a good episode.
I think it's called Drive.
That's a good one.
That one got him the role on Breaking Bad because Vince Gilligan, the writer of that episode, never forgot the performance, never forgot how he made the character more human, even though his character is a piece of shit. Like, he's a nasty...
Absolutely.
He's like a racist, redneck piece of trash, but Bryan Cranston just has that...
But it was so well done.
That thing within him.
You've made me watch that, right?
Yeah. And Bryan Cranston, he's had a career where, he's that guy, and now he's considered one of the elite actors, where whenever a big franchise happens, like, say, when DCEU was in its existence, people were really upset that he wasn't Lex Luthor. Like, he's just
especially
an actor where...
like, his role in Godzilla.
Don't get me started.
I was waiting for Bryan Cranston's role in Godzilla to come.
We all
Everybody was. They sold that movie.
They sold that movie on Bryan Cranston being in it, and then he's in it for like 2 seconds and he dies. And guess what? He's the best part of it because he's a good fucking actor. Like, he's so good in that movie, and then the movie cannot live up to
what were they thinking?
Why would you get Bryan Cranston? And this is the thing. Before 2008, before Breaking Bad, no one would ever say this statement, why would they get Bryan Cranston and waste him? Because he was just that guy actor. Like, he was a good comedy actor, a good dramatic actor.
He's an all-rounder.
Like here, one and done role. Back in the day, on the Usenet groups, JMS would interact with the fans, answer questions, give behind-the-scenes information, and there was some comments about how people really felt for Erickson, felt for this character, had a lot of attachment towards him, and JMS just credits that was all on the actor. He really brings it. That kind of feeling of keep an eye out for this guy. And here we are today where pretty much everything Bryan Cranston is in, people are drawn to it because of the power of his versatility. There's people like me who have a childhood nostalgia and they want to see him in things that are different and similar. Just like how with Brendan Fraser right now is going through a career renaissance where people of a certain era, a certain age have that nostalgia for him and they just want him to do well. Same with Bryan Cranston, where it's like, I was that guy in high school. That was the only person watching Breaking Bad and like from the first episode. And I was telling people like, you got to watch it. And I got those reactions of really the dad from Malcolm in the Middle making meth. And they thought it was like a comedy. They're like, oh, that's so silly. And I'm like, no, it's a really great dramatic TV show. And then people caught up eventually. But I don't know too much to say else about the Cranston. There's so much. That's what I'm meaning. Like, he started off doing anime voices. He went into like comedy and doing Seinfeld. Now he's doing all this drama, and he still does comedies from time to time.
The skits that he does online or like the things that he actually does are great.
As much as I adore the Cranston, there's one image that will never leave my brain, and that's him rollerblading in Malcolm in the Middle to Queen in like a full like sequin get up, and being the method and being the man he is. He learned how to do it. God bless you, Bryan Cranston. Love you. Can't wait to see you in more things. I loved him in Trumbo. I loved him in, what was that film, Wakefield, where it was like a movie where he's like a disgruntled husband who just decides to live in their shed across the way and just spies on his own family as they think he's gone missing. Like that's a whole film.
And then just shows up again.
And then just comes back because he got bored.
That's the film. I really like. Obviously, his performance in Breaking Bad is outstanding. There's a reason that the man won so many Emmys for that.
Poor John Hamm. He tried to win sometimes and Bryan Cranston just kept beating him.
He got there in the end.
He did get there in the end.
Because Breaking Bad wasn't on the air anymore.
I think that was one of the reasons.
Yeah. There wasn't another season of Breaking Bad to nominate Bryan Cranston for. But I particularly... I would be sad if I didn't touch on Trumbo a little bit more. Will, have you watched it?
Yeah, that was a good movie.
Yeah.
I liked that movie.
I think of him
That's a good movie.
Like with the typewriter and the bathtub, the cigarette and the mustache. I fucking love that movie. It just like it's not a perfect movie, but I watched it at the perfect time for me.
I think it's pretty great.
And it is extremely high quality and it's lifted up by his performance. But like, that's a movie where it was like the stars aligned for me to watch that at the point that I did with the history that I had.
And you're a big Trumbo fan. I like his scripts.
Yeah, but I knew nothing about the man before watching that.
But you like those scripts? I know this is a comment that doesn't age well, but I actually thought Louis C.K. was great in that movie. He was. I liked him a lot.
Like you know, completely understood his casting.
What happened after has no effect on his performance in that film.
We have a rating scale on this podcast of Yum being bad and Yum Yum being good. No half yums are allowed, Will. No half yums. You can't go, oh, Ryan, I want to give it a yum and a half. You have to decide, is The Long Night yum or yum
the
yum?
Babylon 5 one.
Thank you for clarifying. I actually had a hard time not saying The Long Dark, which was a really bad episode of Babylon 5 where Franklin fell in love with a patient whose husband just died.
Oh, yeah. The horror horny one that went on. That one.
Would you be surprised to find out that it was written by a guy who worked on Twin Peaks?
What?
Will,
I didn't hate that one, but it was an odd one. Oh, I mean, for The Long Night, I mean, this is absolutely no hesitation. It's yum yum.
Yum yum.
Like, why would you say anything else?
You would be wrong if you did. It's a yum yum from me. Yum yum.
It's a yum yum from me.
Yum yum.
I need to hear from you, Rachel, what we'll be talking about and watching next time on Babylon 5.
On the next Babylon 5.
Episode 6, Into the Fire. The first ones, whose existence dates to the dawn of creation, become allies in Sheridan's coalition. But despite such powerful help, some fateful decisions of life, death, and eternity can only be made by Sheridan.
I like that doesn't mention Londo's plot at all, which is Morden has a very bad last day of his life.
Fuck you, Morden!
He's all healed now. Well, he's all fresh.
He's all in one piece for a little while.
For a little while. Thank you all so much for listening. Will, it was a pleasure to finally have you on. When I started this podcast, I said, I really want Will to be on, but he hasn't watched any B5. And then eventually you start watching it. And I was like, we got to get to a certain point where we can have Will on. And now you're in season 5, you're in the home stretch. I'm like, we have to have Will on. We have to get him here. And I'm so glad that we managed to fit you in. And for one of the Kataja episodes, he's an exuberant character. And, I thought you would be great to have on to talk to us. So thank you for joining.
And thank you, everybody, to listening. If you want to check out our social media, the links are in the description, or if you search for YumYumPod or YumYumPodcast, you will be able to find us. And if you want to hear even more content from us, we're currently working on our third bucket load of content over on our Patreon.
We are talking about so much stuff on our Patreon. We're going through the Alien movies, Will. We're going through the Alien movies, and so one day we'll get to see your favorite film, Alien Covenant. One of the films that you and I have talked about so much, because I've never seen it, but you've told me so much about it, and you tell it to me in such a funny way where the look on your face right now
There's
says
stuff
it.
I could say about that film. There's stuff I could say.
Do you want me to do the fingering, Will?
Maybe we can get Will to record a little guest spot.
We force Will to watch the movie again.
No.
Yes.
I like Will. I don't want to do that to him. We didn't subject him to Star Trek Discovery.
Well, there's the 5th season's coming. So, Will, you have to catch up.
That's scary.
That's scary.
Say no. I know that wasn't into the mic because I was saying it to Will, but Will say no.
You're like blocking the only exit, Ryan. You want to watch
This is like the
Star Trek Discovery.
This is like the second episode. This is like the second episode in a row where it's mentioned that I'm blocking the exit because none of you are let free. Follow us on Patreon. We have a load of content on there. So much is being discussed. Rate and review us on whatever podcast hosting site allows you to do so. Spotify, Apple, Podchaser. And that is it. Jakar said in the pilot episode, the farewell of good eating to you, which he never says again. There are some things that don't come back. Some things that you don't realize haven't been here before either. This is one of the few episodes of Babylon 5 where we see Jakar without his gloves on. I felt like seeing him naked without the gloves on. But I have to say the phrase to both of you. Good eating to you.
Good eating to you, Ryan, and good eating to you, Will.
Good eating, listening. Good eating to you, listening people.